Cut to the Chiefs suite to Taylor Swift, the over-under, 15. Cuts to Taylor Swift hugging family in the suite, over-under, 22. This wagering is better than the Super Bowl itself. Hey everyone, this is Will O'Toole welcoming you to another edition of Park Ridge Sports History. This week, I'm commenting on the Super Bowl because it is really the last gasp of celebration, as we actually are only 6-7 weeks away from the end of winter and the beginning of spring, and of course, baseball. And so what I always liked about the Super Bowl is the fact that it has become so part of Americana. I would actually argue that Thanksgiving, maybe the Christmas season, 4th of July, and the Super Bowl are the four most frequented holidays of families and friends in the United States. And actually, I'm starting to believe it's probably Thanksgiving, and I could be wrong, maybe Christmas, but I would say actually it might be Thanksgiving and then the Super Bowl, as where families and friends come together and celebrate. And it's a good thing because you have the cold, dark winter days, and this allows you on a Sunday afternoon. I know it goes now late into the night, 10:30 at night. The game ends, and maybe another 11:30 for celebration, either by the winning team or lots of crying in the beer for the losing squad, and of course divvying up all the money from the Super Bowl pools. But I think it has become part of Americana. I'm not putting it right up there with Thanksgiving, but it's right there in terms of family gathering, and I think it's a good thing. The other thing I really wanted to talk, and I'm not going to give any of my predictions. First of all, I'm terrible with it. I think I'm going to be rooting for San Francisco. I know. I do like the Chiefs. I love Patrick Mahomes. I just want to see somebody different, I guess, win. And it's so different because for many years there, not that I was a huge Patriot fan, I just liked the whole thing with the Patriots. Actually, they were the villain of the NFL, and sometimes you like the villains. Put it this way. Star Wars, the most interesting character in Star Wars is Darth Vader. Luke Skywalker, no. It's Darth Vader. And sometimes in sports, you do get a thrill out of rooting for the bad guy. And for me, the Patriots over the last, let's say, 15, 20 years under the Bill Belichick and Tom Brady teaming up, they brought a lot of enjoyment and hatred or dissatisfaction to the Super Bowl. And I always thought it made for a lot of fun. When I was a kid, of course, I was a Cowboy fan, then learned to hate them. Of course, I'm not a huge Yankee fan. I've come to respect them, love their history, especially their many times have I've stated on this show. I absolutely love Lou Gehrig. He's probably one of my top 5 players of all time, more so than Ruth, even though I have tremendous. Ruth was just a tremendous player. I go back and forth with my brothers, who I thought was better. Ultimately, it's Ruth. He just did so much more for the game. He was a pitcher and all that. But you got to love Gehrig. And I don't think I really get too much argument when I say I really love Gehrig over Ruth. He was just one of those great players, cross generations, iconic probably in terms of, you have Ruth and Gehrig. In many respects, they're tied together, but they so embodied and defined the first half of the 20th century. The second half, and I really love this, and it was my brother Ed who told me about this, and it text 2424 was obviously a celebration, a special day out in San Francisco for Willie Mays. And I said, wait a minute, Willie Mays, I didn't think that was his birthday. And it's May 6th, and I think he's going to be turning 91. But I thought we'd have some fun going over Willie Mays. Again, he's one of those guys I have pointed out on Park Ridge Sports History. Just one of my – I actually think if I actually had to peg my brother Ed on this, Mays, it probably is with him, Mays, Koufax, and Yaz as his 3 favorite players. And probably it's growing up, it was probably Mays and Koufax. I know my brother really loved those 2 players. So this is a shout out to the Willie Mays fans out there, of which I was one. But to be fair, I never saw him in his prime. Although I did always tell you this. What I always loved about Mays, and I know I get arguments again from my brothers about this, Mays always did something different great every year. Meanwhile, and I think this really hurts the Aarons and the Musials and the Geurigs to a certain extent, you could always pencil them in for, let's say, at least for Aaron, 35, 100, 300. Musial, 40 doubles, 350 batting average, and go on. Ted Williams I put in that realm too, but he's a little bit different because his years were, cut with military service. And of course, the third guy I was talking about was Gehrig. I've said this before. I mean, for 13 straight years, not only did he average over 100 RBIs, not only did he manage to average over 110 or 120, he was right up there, 100 and I think it was 31 RBIs a year for about over 10 straight years. And I know as I'm saying this, I'm probably even wrong about that. It's just an incredible feat by Gehrig. But here's what I'd love to do with Willie Mays. I want to go back to 1954, and I know I'm going to get a lot of Mays fans wrong. And again, what I love about sports history and being able to do this show is sometimes I go back and I rethink maybe some stupid statements are made, or maybe I made some controversial statements. I saw earlier in the year about the greatest catch of all time. And of course, Willie Mays' catch in the 1954 World Series Game 1. I'd like to go back on that and just review that one inning and that series. I always thought you could argue that Mays' catch was great. But I actually have argued that maybe Kirby Puckett's 91, his catch against the wall, with the Twins down 3-2, facing elimination in that World Series to the Braves. It ignited the Twins. They win the last two and of course, capture their second World Series in Minnesota. I've always argued that was probably, how do I say this, maybe a more important catch. But reviewing the tapes of Mays' catch from different angles, I was able to find different angles or people, and I'm going to give you on some of these social media sites, they were able to capture it from different angles. Man, it's hard to go against the Mays catch as the quintessential, the most iconic. It's truly a symbol of at least 1950s baseball and probably all of baseball history, the catch. And of course, it is called the catch. And the fact is, probably even if you're not a huge baseball fan, when we're talking about the catch, you are talking about Willie Mays in that Game 1 against the Cleveland Indians. And I've gone back and forth, and I am going back again and say it really is the greatest catch of all time. And I should say that with enthusiasm, but it was just unbelievable. Let's just go to it, all right? Here are the Giants returning after winning in 1951. And by the way, if you ever get a book, it's called Miracle on Coogan's Bluff. I got that for a Christmas present way back when I was in college. I think I was done that in 2 days, the book, and enjoying it. I was really enjoying every word that was written. Sometimes I finish a book, I just read, let's say, the first lines, or I'll read certain sections of the book to get some more information about a particular event or person or a game. But this one I read from cover to cover. I saved it for many years. I finally gave it away so someone else could enjoy it. But in that game, or in that book, it was a whole replay or of the 1951 pennant race. And of course, I'm not laughing at my mother-in-law, but I got to tell you, if I'm laughing right now, it's because she was a huge Brooklyn Dodger fan, and she had to be held down when Sal Maglie gave up that home run. She is a sweet, simple woman of about 4'11", maybe 5 foot if you stretch her in high heels. But when she told me the story of that 51 season and how she had to be held down because she was so upset that her Dodgers lost. And of course, she can name the entire Dodger roster and know everything about them. I mean, that's how ardent a Brooklyn Dodger fan she was. And I never, as God is my judge, I never bring up 1951. If she talks about the Dodgers, I almost get her into, let's talk about that 51 season, because I love hearing the story of how she had to be held down in a chair in the kitchen. She was so livid that the Dodgers lost the World Series. And of course, if you were a Dodger fan in the 50s, you know what I'm talking about, and the frustration of many Dodger fans because they lost so many World Series to the Yankees, many of them game sevens, until they finally broke through in 55, and then they wind up losing in 56 in game seven, move to LA and promptly win the 59 World Series, the 63 World Series, and the 65 World Series. So I'm having a lot of fun at the expense of you Brooklyn Dodger fans, and I apologize. But one of the problems with the Dodgers was that Willie Mays was on the Giants. And apparently, in a game late that year against Philadelphia, let me just see if I can find that here. Of course, I'm using my old reliable. Actually, I have two reliables today, Baseball Almanac and Baseball Reference. Shout outs to them. But that 54 season could only have been created by the 51 season. That Giant team, late in the year, in the twilight, according to this book, and I wish I had the book with me, they played Philadelphia in the Baker Bowl. And I think it's late September. Let me just see where they are. They're in Philadelphia, and they need to tie the Dodgers. They tied them on the last day. Well, they were in first place, and then they moved into second place. Yeah, they were playing Philadelphia in a big spot. A 2-game series. I think it was late September. But apparently, Mays, according to this story, in the twilight, goes into right field. I believe he was playing center, goes into right field, and basically makes a barehanded catch. And in one motion, throws the ball home, and I think he nailed the Philadelphia runner at home. And I could have sworn that the book said years later that Mays was satisfied with the catch in 1954. He really felt that catch, under that kind of pressure in that situation, was the finest catch he ever made. And of course, I can't get it here. Let me just see. I think it was a game that the Giants won. Obviously, they won. Pardon me. And I think it's late in the game. But anyway, Mays, I believe in the book, Miracle on Coogan's Bluff, claims that was the better catch. But that 54 catch in deep center field in the Polo Grounds, let's go over that. Let's review it. The Giants would surrender 2 runs early in the first inning to the Indians. Of course, they were playing in New York. The Giants would tie it up 2-2 going into the late frames. And on the mound for the Cleveland Indians was Bob Lemon. He actually went into the 10th inning and obviously lost the game. The game went into extra innings. So it's 2-2. And Sal Maglie had gone 7 innings, only surrendered to 2 runs. He gives way to Don Liddell. And actually, ready for this, Sal Maglie is one of my favorite characters from Ball 4, by the way. But Sal Maglie that year, 1954, had one of his finest seasons. He was 14-6 for the Giants that year with a 3.26 ERA. He had a couple of saves, but he was mostly their starter. And Don Liddell, or Little, I should say, all right, only pitched 1/3 of an inning. How would you like to be attached to Willie Mays and the catch? He only had a 5 WAR, actually 10 games over 500 for his career with 4 saves that year. And of course, 1954 with the Giants, he was acquired, I believe, from the Milwaukee Braves the year before. Let me just see if I can get his player value. All right. 1954, Little was 9-4 with a 3.06 ERA with 3 shutouts. So he's brought in to the game. And after Magley had pitched a great game, 7 innings, and then tired, obviously. And here's what happens. Here's how it unfolds. So it's the top of the 8th, 2-2 game. And I didn't realize how late it was as well. It's tied 2-2 in the 8th inning. Okay? Magley surrenders a walk to Larry Doby. He gives up a single to Al Rosen. So now there's runners moving to first and second. Vic Wertz comes in. He's a lefty, and he is facing Don Liddell, who replaced Magley. So now you got nobody out, runners first and second. Here's how they describe it. Fly ball center field, deep center field, in parentheses, Doby to third base. Marv Grissom then comes in and replaces Don Liddell. So don't tell me that they didn't do this thing that we do, the matchups, right? Replace a lefty with a righty, righty with a righty, etc. And Don Liddell pitching and batting 9th. Dale Mitchell pinch hits for Hal Majeski, batting 6th. Hal Majeski pinch hits for Dave Philly, batting 6th. All right. He gets Marv Grissom walks, Rosen to second. All right. So now you have runners first, second, and third. Dave Pope pinch hits for George Strickland, their shortstop, batting second. Marv Grissom gets Dave Pope striking out and then retires the side with an easy fly ball to left field off the bat of Jim Hegan. Now, what makes the catch so incredible is that, and I didn't even think about this, and of course, sometimes you just forget these kind of details and all the rest of it. The game was tied. I always thought a runner scored on the play. Any other outfielder, Doby probably scores from second base. What made the catch, and you can ask many baseball historians and really Mays fans, was not the catch. That was still overwhelming. Don't misunderstand me. But the fact that Mays knew, and he'll tell you this years later, the fact that he couldn't anchor his body to throw home. If you watch that play, he catches and in one motion throws the ball into the infield. Doby was only able to get to third base. All right? Al Rosen couldn't even move up on the play. That ball went all the way to the infield, I believe on a fly ball, or at the very worst, on one hop. Mays prevented not only probably an inside the park home run, because that would have rolled all the way down there. That's number one. He probably prevented not just one run by catching it. He may have also prevented 2 runs because Rosen probably could. Any other player, maybe Rosen moves up to second and third. Doby maybe scores. Maybe they send Rosen to third base. These are all ifs. The reality is this. He makes a catch, prevents Doby with good speed from getting home or from scoring and taking the lead for the Indians 3-2. Instead, bases loaded after the out, and the Giants escape the inning and then go on to win in extra innings. Here's how they did it. Mueller in the bottom of the 10th. Mueller strikes out. Willie Mays walks. Mays steals second. Hank Thompson, along with Mighty Irvin, they were 3 of the early African-American stars on the Giants. He's intentionally the walk. So now you got runners first and second. Dusty Rhodes pinch hits and hits a home run. His glory, his great moment in sports history, Dusty Rhodes hits a 3-run home run off future Hall of Famer Bob Lemon. And even though I hated the Yankees in '78, I do like the fact that at least Lemon led that Yankee team to a World Series, and he finally got his ring. But can you imagine, can you imagine Bob Lemon pitching such a sterling game and then giving up a triple? And really, it was really set up. That whole scenario. Those whole sequences of plays by the Giants, it's really set up not just by the walk to Mays, but the stolen base, because they put so much pressure on the Indian infield and, of course, the Indian defense. Now you get intentional walk, right? Rhodes, I got to be honest with you. If Rhodes had hit the ball in the same spot that Vic Swartz did, Mays would have scored from second. So it was an electrifying game. Now, in the game itself, Mays had the crucial walk in extra innings, because a walk, you hear your Little League guys, walks as good as a hit, scores a winning run. He actually had 2 walks in 5 plate appearances. He did take the collar 0 for 3. But when you think about it, he scores a run, probably prevents 2 runs. So that's, let's say, 3 runs that he saved in the later stages of the game. That's what made him such an incredible player. Now, his last hit, and I've pointed this out, was that 73 World Series against the A's. A game, and this is where I do get angry, a game in which everyone saw him as being old. He slipped in the outfield. It was muddy. I get it. He's 42, 43 years old. But I got to be honest with you. I would take a wounded, aching, old, potentially over-the-hill Willie Mays over any center fielder that the Mets had brought up, with the exception of maybe Tommy Agee. Maybe Agee would have made that play. But I'll take him over any of the tomato cans that have played center field for the Mets. And yeah, he did slip and fall. But you know what? He made up for it by getting the game-winning hit off Raleigh Fingers. And I never realized this until I saw another video of that. Raleigh Fingers gives up the base hit, which scored, I think, either Wayne Garrett. I want to say Wayne Garrett or Felix Millan. I can't remember. But you can see Fingers like kind of throwing his glove up in the air in frustration. But it was Mays' last hit, and his last hit was a game winner. Now, I know he would have a couple other bats in the World Series, but his final major league hit came in a World Series and won the game for the Mets, or put them ahead to stay. All right, let's take a look at Willie Mays and his career. Ready? I always want to do this, and I found a place. I was actually going through records upon records. I love it, but because I'm kind of in a bind here in terms of time constraints, I wanted to do this, a list of Willie Mays' home runs, okay? Now, first one he hit May 28, 1951. Ready for this? Off Warren Spahn. I think we talked about that in another episode. His one, let's just do every 50, all right? So that's his first home run. He's 20 years old, and I think 22 days, okay? Yeah, so it's 20.022. Great. I actually like that Baseball Almanac did that, because he was born May 6th, so he's now 22. He's 20 years old, hits his first home run. Think about that. And I have maintained that many Hall of Famers really do have to start out either as teenagers or right there at the age of 20. Sometimes by age 24, yeah, they can be Hall of Famers, but they've lost 4 potential years there. All right. Now, his 25th home run was off the Dodgers' Carl Erskine. His 26th home run was off the Dodgers' Carl Erskine. And he was one of my mother-in-law's favorite players as well. Then we go on. Ready? Home run number 50 for Willie Mays. He's age 23 and 60 days. And he hit it off Murray Dixon, who, to be honest with you, I've never heard of. He played for the Phillies. But in 1950, yeah, he had a lifetime record of 172, 181. I got to be honest with you, I'm surprised I've never heard of him. 3.66 ERA. He did win 20 games for the Pirates in 1951, so he had to be doing something right. He also, the following year, lost 21, and as the old baseball axiom, takes a pretty good pitcher to lose 21 games, and it's true. Because, just an aside, there is Jerry Koosman, who, after winning 20 games, lost 20 games for the Mets. Kind of unfair. There are reasons extending that Met team of 77 stunk, but you can understand where that kind of adage comes from, because you got to be a pretty good pitcher to hang around for the decision. Sometimes you lose a game 3-2 in extra innings where you're winning 2-1 or it was 2-2 and you just lose. So, losing 20 games is not really it's really kind of sometimes a Purple Heart. How's that? Of baseball, losing 20, because there is recognition that you got to be a pretty good pitcher. Now, this one I knew, his 100th home run, because I did it, came on August 7th, 1955, in a year that he hit 51 home runs. He did it against, ready for this, Joe Nuxhall. Joe Nuxhall, the youngest pitcher ever, at least in original. I think he came up during the war years. He was about 15. Maybe he was 16. He actually lasted more years than I thought. Nuxhall pitched for a number of teams besides the Redlegs. He went to the A's, then the Angels, then came back to the Reds. He actually finished with 135 wins, 117 losses. They brought him up at the age of 16 in 1944. War years. I think they did it as a publicity, because he goes back down to the minors and doesn't resurface until he's age 24 with the Reds. And really his best, he won 17 games with the Reds in 1955. All right. High ERA, 3.9, but he did pitch in Crosley Field. Never had an ERA. Actually had a pretty good ERA in 1963 when he went 15-8, 2.61 ERA. So he's not a bad pitcher. I mean, many of these pitchers, rivalries, and also some pretty decent pitchers. He hit back-to-back home runs in 1955 against Warren Spahn. All right, home runs number 45 and 46 in 1955. And I think he hit quite a few off Warren Spahn later on. Hit home run 116 off Robin Roberts. I apologize. He hit off Warren Spahn home runs 109 and 110. Yeah, I think they were his 44th and 45th that year. I'm trying to just break this down a little bit more. Home run number 125 came against the Redlegs. I keep pulling up the Redlegs, but it was a fellow by the name of Paul Lapalme. Or Lapalme. Now, Lapalme, another guy who played just like for the Pirates, he was 24 and 45, 4.42 ERA in 7 years split between the Pirates, Cardinals, Redlegs, and of course the White Sox. Of course, the 1 year I pick up, it's the 1 year he spent with the Reds, and he goes 2-4 with a 4.67 ERA and surrenders number 125. Let's move on a little bit. 150, he gives up to Taylor Phillips. No, not Taylor Swift. Taylor Phillips, who finishes of the Braves. And Taylor, 16 and 22 on his career. I also remember this about Willie Mays. One thing he said, if you hit 250 against the great pitchers and let's say 300 against the mediocre pitchers, you're going to have a successful career. I always thought it was just those words. And really what he meant was, look, the great pitchers are great pitchers because they get great hitters like me out. But if you can do a lot of damage against, let's say, the inferior or the mediocre talent, you can have a heck of a career. Fortunately for Mays, he had a superlative career because he could hit home runs off the Warren Spahns and the Robin Roberts and all the rest of it. I have yet to see, well, here's one. Ready? Hit it off a future Hall of Famer, number 142 off Don Newcomb. How about this? Wow, I'm just looking at this. You talk about, and I didn't even see these names, and here I am talking about that quote or words to that effect. He hit home runs off, ready for this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 consecutive Dodgers between 1956 on August 19th, right? His six consecutive home runs were against the Dodgers. Now, yes, 1956, you're playing more games against because there were fewer teams and stuff. But this is kind of amazing. He hit number 25 that year against Don Newcomb. Then he hit number 26 against Don Drysdale. He hit number 27 against Sandy Koufax. He hit number 28 off Carl Erskine. And he hit number 29 off Ed Roebuck. and he hit number 30 off Don Drysdale. So he bookended Don Drysdale on a succession, 6 consecutive home runs in the 1956. Ed Roebuck, I think we had mentioned him as well on a past episode. He actually was 52 and 31, played for the Dodgers, Senators, and Phillies. Yeah, I think I mentioned him in a Senator story, 1963. Not a bad ERA, 335. Not too familiar with him, but he had 62 saves lifetime. Oh, that's what it was. He had 12 saves for the Dodgers one season and then 12 saves for the Phillies. Actually had a pretty 627 winning percentage. I don't know what really happened. Maybe his arm just fizzled. He does retire from the game at age 35. My big thing with Mays is that at the age of 40, knowing that he didn't have, let's say, the same impact on the team, led the major leagues in walks. It was the only time he led the league, ever drew 100 walks in a season, and actually led the league, the major leagues, in 1971 in on-base percentage. And remember, I did a breakdown of that year, 1971. He started off real hot. I mean, extremely hot, carried the Giants. And like the Giants, they kind of wilted, and they barely survived the end. But Mays kind of picked up his game at the end, drew a ton of walks. And it was almost like, this is what I love about Mays. And I know I get I'll get arguments, but it was almost like he picked out, and I think I saw an article on this too, where he actually said, he does say this. He actually picked out a stat, or he would look at what he did the previous year and say, all right, what am I going to concentrate on the following year? Because he talks about the one year where he said, you know what, I think I got to hit more home runs. Well, I know in 71, it was his last hurrah with that Giant team of Willie McCovey, Juan Marichal, and Gaylord Perry. And I do believe reading an article about that season where he said, I had to do something else because he knew I was getting old. And Charlie Fox put him in the many times, although not all the time, but he would lead him off that year. Although when he was real hot in the beginning, Mays was hitting third and fourth. He wound up hitting 18 home runs at the age of 40 or 41. But he drew so many walks that year. In fact, I'm going to get to that. All right, home run number 150 is off Taylor Phillips. Let's move on. Let's get to 200. Oh, you know what? I looked at 175 and said, let me try 175. Guess who he hit 175 off? Joe Nuxhall of the Reds. That happened to be number 23 that season in 1957. 175 for his career. Let's do 199. It's Hal Jeffcoat of the Redlegs. Listen, I'm not picking this up. It's just amazing to me how I'm picking this up. And then he goes like this. All right, Jeffcoat, 199. Guess who he hits number 200 off? One of my favorite pitchers of all time. First of all, he had a name as if he was the mayor of a Christmas Story, the town that the Christmas Story takes place in. I love him. Warren Spahn. He hit number 200 off him on 5/23/1958. He's only 27 years old. Actually, technically, 27 years, 17 days. 1958 hit number 200. Let's go to 250. If this is a red, I just can't believe it. Hit number 250 off one of my favorite players and nicknames. Not a bad pitcher. Finally gets a Cardinal involved here. Ready for this? Vinegar Bend Mizell, who was one of my favorite all-time cards from that book I've talked about, The Great American Baseball Trading Card and all the rest of it. It's where I really learned a lot about the old players and stuff. Vinegar Bend was not a bad pitcher. Remember, he pitched for the Cardinals in their lean years, but still managed a 90 and 88 record. He actually pitched for the 62 Mets and went 0-2. He did finish with a 506 winning percentage, and probably his best year was the Cardinals' 1959. 13-10 with the Cardinals' 1959. He had a 4.20 ERA, but actually it was, I think, well, no, I shouldn't say that. He goes to the Pirates and goes 13-5. Actually, he played for their 60 team. I apologize. I just went overlooking. 7.22 winning percentage, 3.12 ERA, and helped the Pirates defeat the Yankees in the 60 World Series. All right, let's go back here because times are running, and I just want to get up to his other ones. So Let's go to number 300. If this is a red, I will die. All right. Nope. It's a guy by the name of Jack Curtis of the Cubs. Finally, we get the Cubs involved. The previous ones, ready for this? Number 297 and 298 came against Dallas Green. Same game, 629-61. Let's go to 400 because now you're getting into that rarefied air of a slugger. Number 400. Number 399. This poor guy. Thank heavens he is one of my favorite team. Guess who victim number 399 was? None other than Joe Nuxhall on August 25th, 1963. At this point, Mays is 32 years old. Number 400 comes against another really good pitcher. Already mentioned the Cardinals' Curt Simmons. Guess who he hit number 401 against? This is why he is an elite player. Sandy Koufax. Then he hit one for good measure the next day against Don Drysdale. Unbelievable. Yes, he does hit one, number 405 against Jay Hook in the Mets in 1963. Let's go now let's have some fun here in the last couple of minutes. Number 450 was against a guy by the name of Earl Francis, but number 448 and 449 were hit against Bob Veal, one of my favorite all-time names. Then he hit 452 against Lindy McDaniel, 453 against Larry Jackson. Let's go on. And don't forget, there are other guys who are victims here. Jim Bunning was number 455. Warren Spahn again, 457. Let's get to 500. Don Notabart, who I did hear about, pitched for the Astros. This occurred 1965. Willie is 34 years old and hit number 500 against Don Notabart of the Houston. Well, they were not the Astros then. They were the Colt 45s, a great name. Number 550. All right. Number 550 was against in 1967. Now, you got to remember, Mantle hit number 536 in 68. So he's, a ton of home runs against the great Mickey Mantle. He hit it against another Astro, Barry Latman. Don't know too much about him, and I would love to indulge myself on that, but I'm just running out of time here. Actually, he hit 558 against Steve Carlton. Hit one against Jerry Koosman, number 562. Hit one against Rick Wise in 1968. Don Drysdale, another one of his victims, number 566. Let's do 599 because 599 was Pat Jarvis. Now, why is he significant? He also gave up number 500 to Ernie Banks in 1970 or 71. All right. So Pat Jarvis was number 599. 1969, at the age of 38, Willie Mays hits number 600. Number 650 for Mays comes against, Jim Barr, another giant. Too bad, because 651, it's Fergie Jenkins. And then 2 days later, Fergie Jenkins again. He actually had, 2 home runs later, it's Fergie. So he went Fergie Jenkins, Bert Hooton, Fergie Jenkins. Tom Hall, Al Downing was number 655. And of course, he surrendered number 715 to Hank Aaron. His last home runs, ready for this? 656, Randy Jones. 657, Baylor Moore and the Expos. 658, the Reds again, Ross Grimsley, who won 20 games. Pretty good pitcher. 659 against Diego Segui, another pretty decent pitcher. And his final one, number 660 against Don Gullett on August 17th, 1973, while the Mets were in a pennant drive. Remember, that was the beginning of it. On, I believe, August 15th or August 14th, the Mets were mired in last place and then have an unbelievable end of August run. And, of course, an unbelievable September. Beat the Reds, win the pennant, and then fall unbelievably to the Oakland A's. That is the home run list, or many of the home runs of the great Willie Mays, who was celebrated on 2/4/24 of this year. This is Will O'Toole. Enjoy the Super Bowl, and this is our beginning of the Hot Stove League. Thank you for joining me for Park Ridge.